For the past year now, I've made my podcast with a company called Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First, it's free. That's right, it doesn't cost you anything to make your own podcast. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your own podcast right from the computer or your own phone. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and every other place. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's really easy. You'll have your podcast up and running in no time. Go to Anchor. Welcome to Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris. Every week I'll discuss a beer that maybe we've forgotten along the way while we accumulate check-ins and our badges. Some weeks I'll feature a new beer that has potential to be a classic. Being from Chicago, I'll talk about some local beers I had during the week. I'll add my spin to events of the day. And at the end of the show, I'll call out the Jagoffs of the week. This week's beer will be Saison DuPont. It's Beer in Front coming up now. Welcome to episode 52 of Beer in Front. I do thank you so much for listening. This is going to be another good show. Now, maybe one day I will, or people will be honest and just say, this show is just mediocre, but I'm phoning it in. But no, that's not this show. This is a good show. I'm going to have part one of my interview with Lauren from the Beard Ale podcast. Part two is going to drop on Friday. And I'm also going to have the quintessential Saison from Belgium, Saison DuPont. This will be my Beer in Front. Before I get started, I made an error last week when I said that both Georgia Senate seats were up in 2026. A few listeners have pointed out that Raphael Warnock's seat will be up in 2022. I totally effed up there. Senate terms are for 6 years, and when he defeated Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed Johnny Isaacson's seat, I figured that term was up. It was not, so I'm a Jagoff for assuming. Now there's still 10 days left to get in your Beer in Front for the episode coming out the last week in March. I'm looking for a well-rounded group of people to talk about a beer that they love for 3 minutes in length, give or take here or there, and I'll piece them all together, and that show will drop the last week in March. I have a lot of people that are on board with this. I've had a couple people already email me their segments. I'm really looking forward to this. So this should be a great show, and if you're interested, I tweeted it out a couple times, or if you have questions about it, email me at dave@beerinfront, and we'll try to set things up. If you want to record it, because frankly, who wants to hear me? I'm surprised you want to hear me talk to begin with, but who wants to hear me talk more? I would rather hear you talk. So if you want to record your segment in something like Audacity or GarageBand, something like that, and just email me the MP3 files, great. If not, we could always set up a quick Zoom call and I could record it from there and keep the file and do the editing and stuff like that. So it's ever easier for you. If you ever wanted to be on a podcast, I do want to hear from you and the beers you drink. I want to hear about beers from all over the world, from beers from your part of the country. I had people that already emailed me. Tandy from the Beer Ladies podcast in Ireland emailed me her piece that I'm going to include. And this is great. Just the fact that I'm having somebody in Ireland say Beer in Front. I need to make that like my ringtone now. That's awesome. But no, I do want to hear from you. My goal is to get a well-rounded group of people to discuss what they like. I just don't want a bunch of bearded white guys, because you hear enough of that from me. So if you're interested, please email me the piece and I'll have it out the last week in March. 2 weeks ago, I had Rod J from Rod J's Beer Ventures on my show. And last night, I went on his live stream and we were talking about a lot of stuff. I had a couple good beers. So please, follow Rod J, or if you follow me on Twitter, we sent out the links for that. So please check him out. That was a fun time. Later this week, you'll be able to hear the interview that Lauren from the Beard Ale podcast did with me on their show. So I'll let you know when that drops. That was a good interview as well. Also, later in this week, I'll be talking to the Half Hour Beer Bros, and I'll also be talking with the Stressed, Depressed, and Anxious podcast. So a lot of good things happening in the next couple weeks on the show. All right, welcome back to Beer in Front. Today, I'm very happy to have Lauren on from the Beard Ale podcast. That's someone, both her and her brother do the show. Those are people you definitely need to follow and listen. So, Lauren, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to talk more beer than anything else today. So,
yeah. Well, I'm curious, how did you guys get started? Now, was this your idea, your brother's idea? Tell everyone about yourself and the podcast.
Oh, yeah. So on our podcast, we like to say we talk about two of the greatest things in the world, beer and Weird Al. And that's because that's pretty much what we believe. And
yeah,
it was sometime in, I want to say late January, early February of 2020. So before we even knew that we'd be, locked down and have all this, time in our houses, we were kicking back and forth the idea of doing a podcast because I live in Florida. My brother lives up in Pennsylvania. And so we don't get to see each other all that often, but we thought, if we started a podcast, we could talk pretty regularly and have a reason for it, versus just, calling up on the phone. So we're like, what could the podcast be about? And so we settled on beer pretty quickly, but then we were like, there's a lot of beer podcasts out there and we're not as, I guess, into the nitty gritty with beer as some other beer podcasters out there are. We love it. We appreciate it. And, we like talking about it, but people wouldn't want to listen to us just talk about beer for an entire episode. So we said, well, what else do we both really, really love? And my brother goes, Weird Al. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense because the way I like to think about it is there's two things that have brought our entire family. So I'm talking about me and my brother and our parents. There's two things that have brought us together at various points in our lives. The first one being Weird Al, because, when you're a kid and then a teenager, you tend to not have the same music taste as your parents, but we would all go as a family to see Weird Al and everybody enjoyed it. So the first time we saw Weird Al was when I was 13, and the last time we saw Weird Al as a family was 3 years ago. So
now, was that, you've posted it before, a picture of yourself with him? Was that like a VIP meet and greet thing?
All right, cool. that was a VIP meet and greet in 2019. So all
right,
that was probably the best moment of my life. And I'm not married and I don't have kids, so I'm allowed to say that meeting Weird Al was the best moment of my life because, nobody's going to get mad about it.
No.
But then beer is kind of the same sort of thing. I think, and it's not like we're all just, drinking in order to tolerate each other, but I think about, it was our dad that kind of got us into appreciating craft beer. So as we kind of grew up, beer was something that we all had in common. We all had our varied outside interests, but Weird Al and beer were the two things that we could all always talk about with each other. So the podcast kind of came sort of naturally from that. I'm shocked people like it. So
now, have you heard from Weird Al or the people in his camp? Do you know if he's aware of your podcast?
Yeah, he is aware of our podcast, and I found that out actually indirectly because one of our listeners told me that he found our show because it was listed on Weird Al's website, along with some other Weird Al related podcasts. There's some great ones out there. We're All Yankovics, Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch podcast. There's a couple, the Weird Alphabet. So there's a lot of people doing podcasts about Weird Al as well. So we're on his website, and he has liked one of my tweets.
Oh, did you frame that?
Yeah, I printed out, put it in a frame. Al liked this.
Yeah.
That was a wild moment. I was speechless. I said, "Oh my gosh," because you're used to getting likes and stuff on Twitter, comments and notifications and all that, but you never expected to say Al Yankovic, verified checkmark, liked your tweet. Wild stuff.
For the rest of the interview with Lauren from the Beard Ale podcast, tune in on Friday when that episode will drop, and I'll have the remainder of the interview, and it's well worth checking out. The beer that's in front of me today is, like I mentioned in the intro, this is the quintessential Belgian farmhouse ale, Saison DuPont. This has been around forever. The farm itself and the year they started brewing this originally was 1844. It's been run by the same family since 1920. And then the yeast strain that they use has been around since 1945. So this, by all means, is a classic old school beer. Let's crack this one open. Oh, this is really good. I haven't had this in ages, but just a fantastic color. The aroma on this, the aroma is really good. You pick up like the Belgian yeast notes in here. The taste, wow, that's really good. I don't know why I haven't had this in so long. I mean, the taste on this is terrific. You get some pepper in this, very subtle pepper. There's the fruitiness from like the Belgian yeast. There's a lot going on here, and it's all good. Now, the carbonation is terrific. It's a really fine carbonation. The bubbles are great. It's very like lacy. And it finishes. Hold on, let me have another sip of this. It has a really nice dry finish to this. This is a phenomenal beer. Some people have called it the best beer in the world. I don't know if I'd go that far, but this is an awesome beer. You should check it out. You could find it anywhere. It's, like I said, it's an old school classic. It's bottle conditioned, so if you're not used to that, there's a little sediment on the bottom, not a lot. Don't be afraid. It's delicious. So go check it out. Saison DuPont. Oh, I'm glad there's 2 shows this week because there were plenty of Jagoffs. So let's get right to it. All right, here are the Jagoffs of the Week. In 2017, 278 Republicans voted for a tax cut for the rich. Just 2 months ago, 147 Republicans voted to overturn the election. 0 voted for COVID relief. 0. But that didn't stop Lauren Boebert and Maria Salazar from trying to frame it like they were part of it and they were helpful. Salazar, now, she was the worst. She's a congresswoman from Florida who put out a release that the Biden administration just implemented her bipartisan COVID relief bill. Maria voted against this bill on the floor. Jagoff. A Michigan man went to virtual court on his suspended driver's license charge. The guy was sitting in the driver's seat of his own car while he was going to court. Dude, Jagoff. A Chicago man called the police this weekend because his husband hit him because there was no toilet paper in the bathroom. Jagoff. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's office spent 22,000 hours looking for voter fraud during this past election. And they found a total of 16 cases, 1-6, of people that had a false address. Now, there's 17 million registered Texas voters, and they found 16 total. Now, this comes out to over 34 weeks of a person working full-time to find one person with the wrong address. Ken Paxton, you're a jagoff. Now, this is my opinion because you're an attorney general. I don't want you coming for me. It's just my opinion. But you wasted a lot of money, jagoff. 16. Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts. Yes, Cub fans, that Ricketts family. Now, he had a press conference saying that if you legalize marijuana, you're going to kill your kids. Jagoff. Habitual liar Congressman Madison Cawthorn says that it's time for big tech companies to answer for their crimes and that the First Amendment isn't a suggestion. So, we're going to have the government prosecute private companies to protect the First Amendment. And to get your message across, you tweeted this. And Twitter is one of the companies you suggest that should be prosecuted. I'm not sure, Madison, you know how the First Amendment works, son. You're a jagoff. This literally is a story that I had to make sure didn't come from The Onion. I'm like, there's no way this is legit. Michigan State University announced that their basketball team will now, or for the next 5 years until the contract is up, be called the Michigan State Spartans, presented by Rocket Mortgage. I never, ever want to hear a college or university or the NCAA say that they can't pay student athletes when you could go sign this contract. You're a bunch of jagoffs. And definitely what qualifies as the jagoff of the week. Cherokee County Sheriff's Officer, I guess he's the captain, Jay Baker. He said that the person that killed 8 people yesterday was pretty much fed up and at the end of his rope. And yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did. Captain Baker, go fuck yourself. You're a piece of shit. If this person wasn't Caucasian, you would have just shot him. You wouldn't have apprehended him. You would have just fucking killed him. He had a bad day. He's at the end of his rope. You make this out like he just didn't go through the next round of American Idol. He didn't have a bad day. He killed people in a hate crime. So, Captain Baker, fuck you, jagoff. Wow, and I made it a month without swearing, but sorry, that guy needed it. All right, everyone, that's the Jagoffs of the week. When you listen on Friday, I've got a couple more, and I'll be clean on that. All right, that's going to wrap things up for episode 52.1 of Beer in Front. I want to thank again Lauren from the Beard Ale podcast for coming on, and you could hear the rest of our conversation. That will be released Friday morning. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you in a couple days. Bye.